right, everyone, welcome again to the latest installment of The Way It Is. I'm your host, Luca with Remax Service First Realty, and I'm always pleased to have guests. And today I'm welcoming a fellow podcaster, Tim Cunningham, aka the Coach, who is basically the business development manager for the Kingstonist, which is Kingston's largest news outlet, which was unbeknownst to me. And they have currently between 35 and 50,000 daily readers, and they're building on that. And so, Tim, we connected a couple of weeks ago, just on a totally random. Different
conversation.
Different conversation, and yeah. So anyway, welcome, Tim.
Thank you for having me, Luca. Good to see you, buddy. Always good to see you, Luca.
Yeah. Well, and Tim, if you don't mind, I'm going to divulge that because I'm envious of your work from home is on Griffin Lake, just northeast of Kingston, which is a very lovely lake and a nice spot to be.
It is. So. I'm not today. It's a little damp and chilly today, but I'm at the cottage, and it's been a great place for the last year and a half. I have a place in town, but. This is a 3-season place, and really lucky to have it. Really blessed to have it. So it's a great spot to be. Yeah.
So I was happy to have you as a guest, because as you've been doing podcasting long before I even started, and I dare say I'm certainly not an expert at all. But anyway.
Well, that's the beauty of podcasting. You learn as you go.
Yeah, no, we're having some fun for sure. But you cut your teeth in the radio business, didn't you, or the marketing business? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
In the radio end, I was in the marina business for a long time. I left. I was at Brock University. I actually left school early to get into the marina business, and I ended up buying Rito Marina and loved that business. But it was changing, and I was in it back in the day when we were paying 15% interest rates, borrowing money and paying that kind of dough. And it was a lot of fun, but that business, as people have seen, has really changed. It's a lot of marinas have just disappeared, and it cost a lot of money to upkeep a facility like that. So I got into the broadcasting business and went to old CKLC Fly FM down at the corner of Brock and Wellington, and worked with some great people there. Doug Jeffries is still on the air. Bill Hall does the local weather, and really learned the radio business from Rob Wood was our general manager at the time, and he's got 80/20 Info Inc. now, and Errol Jess was a mentor. Jack Thompson, who's a radio legend, learned from people like that. Was there for a bunch of years, and then I left. I left to do. Was hired by a client actually to do some marketing. A guy that had a couple of companies and did some marketing for him. And at that time, John Wright was starting to apply for the license from the CRTC for a new radio station in Kingston. So a group of people helped him out with letter writing and because it's quite an involved process getting a license from the CRTC. And long story short, John won the license, and he had a lot of competition. Chum wanted a station here. Big G, who actually ended up, Gary McColeman had applied, and we ended up joining forces. So John got the license and started K-Rock. Got the license at the end of 2000, started the station in 2001. And it was a great ride because I was one of the first people hired. And I think when we started on air, there literally were only a handful of us in the building, and the business just grew and grew and grew. Right. And it was the one thing that taught me that if you couldn't embrace change, you weren't going to survive in that business, because it changed almost every week. Yeah. But the early days of K-Rock were it was a real family business. It was I always compare it a lot to Saturday Night Live. You put in a lot of hours. It was very creative, and we had a lot of success. So it was fun. And so I got into broadcasting. Really got into broadcasting there. I had done some commercial work when I was at CKLC, but really doing live stuff at K-Rock, and started this sports morning bit I was the only one in the building that had a sports background. So they needed a sports guy, and I'd done some stuff. It was the Tucker and Taz show, and
I remember
I think
that.
it was
I remember
Taz.
that.
Taz baptized me the coach, and it was just we had nicknames for everybody. Everybody had a nickname, and that was mine, and it stuck. And it was something that just sort of started as a laugh. And the first time they had me on the air, I bet against a Golden Lab on Monday Night Football, and it was just kind of a joke. And then Tucker left, and Shadow Davis came in. It became the Shadow and Taz show. And Shadow thought, this could be a real bit. And he actually, part of his show was that we want to do the coach every day. And that's when things really changed. And it was instead of doing it, sort of 3 times a week with Tucker and Taz, it became every day. And and with the radio business being the way it is, it's a pretty small community. I did the coach on K-Rock for a number of years, and then I can't remember. Somebody left and went to Winnipeg, so I got a gig in Winnipeg doing it. Somebody else left, went to Calgary, got a gig in Calgary doing it. Taz eventually left, so I ended up in the air in London. And then before I knew it, I was doing about 9 stations a morning. And for something that started as a joke, it turned into something pretty. It was a great part-time job. And because of the coach, then I got to do TV work and still do OHL hockey. So it was something that started as an accident that's actually turned into a pretty nice career.
Well, you know what? And I'm delighted always to hear stories like that because, twofold. One is, it just evolved into something that was beneficial. But secondly, it's something you love doing and that you enjoyed doing, right? I mean, and there's not many of us can say that all the time. I'm going to say that.
Well, absolutely, and it was a labor of love because preparation, as you know, Luca, now doing a podcast, the prep work is the key to success in it. And so by the time I got to be doing multiple stations a day, I was literally studying all day long and getting up early. I'd get up at 4 a.m. I would start on air just after 6 and sort of do all these stations between 6 and 9. And it was like doing about 8 or 9 essays every morning. And so it ended up, as I said, being a nice side gig. But after a while, it got to be too much, and I pulled back from it in 2016 is when I sort of started pulling back because I wanted to focus on other things and other parts of the business, and then but it was for about 10 years. It was a great ride.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's
and the OHL stuff, the Ontario Hockey League stuff was great. That started as I had coached at Queens for 10 or 11 seasons, and then they just had me on one night as a fill-in guest, and 14 years later, I'm doing I'm a part of the play-by-play crew, and not only do Frontenac games, do games other games throughout the league. So it's.
Well, and I was going to ask, did you ever actually coach an any kind of sports team whatsoever? Yeah. So you did coach hockey.
I have a coaching background, and that's how it started. And I coached at Queens, and there was a while for a while, like any coach at that level, you think you'd like to go on and coach at a different at a different level. But for me, I did have an opportunity to go and coach in the States, but I had 2 little kids at home and married, and it just wasn't something I wasn't willing to leave my kids. And then just as circumstance have it, I became less mobile. So broadcasting was sort of a natural step. I knew I couldn't go on in coaching, but it was a way of keeping my toe in the pool when it certainly came to the hockey business.
Yeah. So let's segue into your latest iteration then, which is this Kingstonist, which obviously is, I think most Kingstonians are familiar with it, and obviously it's gaining traction. So why don't you share some insights into that for us?
Well, this was something that was started by serial entrepreneur and incredible good guy AJ Kilty and Tori Stafford and Chris Villella, and I came on board a couple of years ago with them, and again, I had probably Tori had written for a lot of outlets, including the WIG and different magazines. I'd sort of had more of a recent media background, obviously, so it's and sales background. So it's been a really good fit, and I've learned a lot. I really wasn't part of the digital age, being in radio. Radio's still pretty old school in a lot of ways. So this has been the learning curve has been great, and just seeing the growth of this thing has been incredible. I think when we started, we had maybe 5,000 or 6,000 readers a day, and now we're up to we're doing some months we're doing 1.5 million views a month.
Wow.
And so it's we've been able to get through the pandemic, and the pandemic has been a little frustrating in that we were really getting momentum, and then the pandemic hit, and it slowed things down, and then we're starting to get momentum, and then we get the second wave. But now, we're stronger for it. So we've got a great team of writers led by Tori Stafford. Chris Villella is a guy that I don't think Chris ever sleeps. He also does the Make It Home YGK handle on Twitter. And so he's covering stuff all the time. It's like he's going 24 hours a day. We're actually going to start a radio station, an online sort of streaming station that we're technically working out right now, and it's going to play only local music. So it's we're 100% Kingston. Everything we do and all the reporting we do is 100% Kingston. So we streaming, which we hope to kick off sometime this summer. It'll be 100% Kingston artists.
Well, that's amazing, and what a great just community oriented and give back to the community based idea, right? I mean,
well, Luca, that was really why K-Rock was so successful, because the competition, there was a feeling in the sort of the late 90s in the radio business that you couldn't be local. You had to be sort of more corporate and more encompassing of Canada and the province, and that never ever made sense to me. I was told that when I was at CKLC that we're going to be less local and sort of cover less, and I thought, why then you're just another radio station. So when John Wright started K-Rock, one was that we were going to be local, and the other thing he did that taught me a lot, taught a lot of people a lot. His theory was, we're going to hire just really nice people. We'll take less talent for nice and just hardworking, nice people, and that's sort of what Kingston is all about too. It's really sort of the same model that with the demise of the newspaper industry, and nothing against the WIG, it's just a victim of its industry.
That's
and
right.
We saw a hole in the market that needs local coverage, and that's why K-Rock was successful. It's why Kingstonist is starting to be successful.
Well, and I think it also speaks to, though, and that's I'll just quickly take a quick little aside there, because another reason I wanted Tim on is because he's born and raised in Kingston. Actually went to high school with my second oldest sister, Sonia. So
I went to grade school with your
great.
sister,
That's
Sonia.
right. Sorry, grade school, and then all the way through. So she
was always the smartest person in the class. So I didn't know her because she was so smart.
Well, I'm going to send her the link to this when we're done, for sure.
I know. I have fond memories of your sister, Sonia. She was a very nice person.
I will definitely let her know. Thank you for saying. And but me, I'm born and raised here, lived here my entire life too, and we're not that far apart in age. But I wanted to have a Kingstonian on, and just because my podcast is about, not only just real estate stuff, which, at times there's only so much information you can give that's about real estate or real estate related that, is interesting at the best of times, but, or topical even. But I also wanted to make this more community based and community minded, and give my listeners and whoever's listening an opportunity to get insights about the community from their fellow citizens, right? Or fellow residents. So, and I guess in saying that, you've touched on, during your career and things you've done, we're in a whole brave new world here in Kingston. And sorry, I just had a squirrel moment there because I was remembering the point I was going to try to get to the first time. But Kingston, as you and I both know, And as large as it's grown and the population's growing and it still continues to grow because we've seen a large influx, it still maintains that small town feel. And I mean, case in point, CKWS News every night. People watch it religiously. Those that get the WIG standard get it religiously. I mean, I had a brief blush when I was doing some marketing with Chorus and had a spot on Chorus on a real estate. We had a real Holly and I had a real estate segment. And, I still get people today say, oh, yeah, I saw you on TV. And dude, I haven't been on there in like 10 years or probably something like that. So anyway, but it just speaks to, Kingston's appetite for supporting local and wanting to know about their community, right?
Well, but I don't think it's unique to Kingston. I think it's true of any community. And we just, we're lucky that a community this size has a television station like CKWS. And, they've got a ton of talented, a lot of people I know over there, very talented. And you're right, Luca, that news package that they have at 6:00 has incredible ratings. And I've advised a lot of clients that, if you're going to advertise and considering doing something, you've got to talk to the people at Chorus and do some TV during the news. Nesbitt Burns is on news. My brother used to work there, and they were toying around with it. And I said, here's two pieces of advice. Number one, do it. And number two, don't ever give up that spot because there's be a long lineup. And they've been doing it for years. So, and we've just been blessed with a lot of talented people, not only in the arts, but in the business community in Kingston. It's a very unique town. I mean, you could travel far and wide through this country and you're not going to run into too many communities like Kingston, but people love local and there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in Kingston. There always is. There's never a shortage of news,
No, and let's face it, everybody always wants to know somebody else's business. Right?
That's right. Oh yeah. That's why I live out at the lake.
Exactly. So that's a perfect time for me to ask you, given, where you've been, where you are now, and everything you've experienced, what are some of the, changes or the biggest changes or noteworthy things in your mind that you could say that you've seen about Kingston, I guess?
Well, I remember as a kid, Ontario Street was like, was an industrial, rundown industrial area with the old shipyard and the old locomotive building. And, now it's vibrant. The downtown is certainly because of people like Michelle Langlois and the BIA. The downtown is very vibrant and so many changes. So look at and Berryfield. Look at when I was a kid. The Highway 15 used to actually run right through Berryfield, and it was a tough area. And the growth. I think the third crossing is going to, something that was talked about when I was a kid, finally coming to fruition is going to certainly help the East End. It's just, the city has changed just so dramatically in the last 15 years even, and for the better. We've got, I had Mayor Patterson on last week and talking about, Kingston's so popular, it's become a problem because housing, and not only housing for people wanting to come here, but affordable housing is a big issue. So, with growth, we have growing pains, and but it is still an incredibly vibrant city. It has for a city its size, you're saying, it's still has a small town feel, but for a city this size, it has a ton to offer. And again, I think it's unique for cities this size throughout Canada.
Yeah, no, and a little teaser. Then I'll let the cat out of the bag. So Mayor Patterson's going to be my guest next week on the podcast. So I'm excited.
He's a good dude.
Yeah. No, well, I'm thrilled to have those topical conversations for sure about, those real estate related matters. And also too, coming out of this pandemic now as well, in terms of how Kingston tries to recover, because, and I've talked about this all along. I mean, basically my entire podcast has been, every episode is essentially focused on pandemic issues, right? Whether it's small business or what have you. And there are, as much as there's going to be growth and there's going to be people advantaged by it, there's those that suffered and that aren't going to make it through, right? So
Yeah, yeah. I think Mayor Patterson with the Economic Recovery Committee that they have, the city's doing its part, and through this devastation, there will be, when a forest burns, I mean, there is new growth, and so there will be new opportunities that business owners that have had to change, that have lost their businesses. There will be other opportunities down the road. I'm confident of that.
Yeah. So I was chatting with one of my best mates last night, and we talk a lot every day, too many times a day. Sometimes about pertinent stuff, and sometimes about stuff that's totally irrelevant. But he made a mention of a business name to me last night because we got on a tangent of who owned that and who owns this, and he mentioned Joe and Paul's. Do you remember the store Joe and Paul's?
Joe and Paul's owned by Rick Baird.
Rick Baird. That's the conversation we were having. And I was going, I started laughing because it'd been so long since that name had been, in my psyche. And I remember walking downtown. I mean, so
that's right. That's where I went to get my Howick 5 stars.
So what I'm going to ask you this, and not to embarrass you or whatever, and only say those that you want to say, but what are some of your, or were and now still are maybe some of your favorite haunts or places in Kingston that you'd like to go?
Well, some of my favorite haunts was my favorite haunt was back in the day was Shaky Landings at the Prince George, and then next door was Dollar Bills. And the thing about the Dollar Bills was they would bring in, Patrick Russo owned it. And they would bring in acts from not just one night, but from Monday through Saturday. He'd bring in the Lincolns and David Wilcox for a week, and the list goes on and on of all these great Canadian bands that came and played for an entire week in Kingston, and academically, I suffered because of it. I had 4 marks thanks to Pat Russo and all the great entertainment he brought to town. I remember being there one night and the Powder Blues Band was playing, and Aykroyd, it was the first time anybody, Aykroyd got up and played, and just some incredible nights. And Shaky Landings was adjacent to it, and it was a tavern. It was a great place where you could just sit down and have a few beers with your buddies and have a smoke. And remember in the old days, you could smoke inside. And, that was always a favorite. The sports at the Queen's Hotel has always been a favorite of mine. Again, a tavern where you can just sit and chat and watch a game. And again, just a great, very conversational type places. I was never one big for the nightclubs and like that. I sort of like to sit and chat with people. And that's why I think the Red House has done so well, because it's just it's a gathering place, and it's just a cool place to hang out.
So I'm going to be self-indulgent. I'll tell a story which not very many people know, and I'm half afraid to say it out loud. But so talking about the sports at the Queen's Hotel. Okay, so my brother and I cut our teeth learning how to drink there, and this all came. So one day, and we were 16 years old, Tim. So anyway, that whatever, believe that as it is. I'm sure I'm not the first underage.
Is your twin brother correct?
Yes. He passed away a couple of years ago, unfortunately.
I'm sorry.
But no. So first year at Queen's Frosh week, sitting on the steps of Douglas Library with my Queen's Frosh group and one of my Gales, who's now still to this day one of my closest friends. And they said, well, do you want to do a pub crawl? And I just half facetiously, half jokingly said, well, why don't we go to the sports, the Queen's Hotel? And she goes, but you go to the sports, the Queen's Hotel? I said, yeah. She goes, you know Bob and Wayne? I said, yeah. I said, so, you'd walk in, you'd hold one finger for one tray, 2 fingers for 2 trays, and the way you'd go, right? So we had my brother and I, we had our 19th birthday party there, which was like epic anyway. So that I remember great memories there when they still had the TVs with the stuffed ducks in them and everything like that.
That's right.
And that's what it was. And I know they had to update and everything like that, but it's always was never the same with back when it was, the vinyl floor and those tiles and so
the Sportsman's Lounge, and of course the Manor. There was the Manor, of course. That again after Dollar Bills closed down, the Manor was really the place to go for live entertainment. So it's and back in the day when the hip started, that they were almost the house band. So saw them a lot, and a lot of other great local talent there, and they brought in big acts too. So it was a good place to see music.
Right, and then when Ross Greaves became involved, because then he developed the hub today, which was Stages, and that's when I was in university, I was a doorman at Stages, and I tell you, one of the best byproducts was seeing the live music. Right, Tom Cochrane, Red Rider, all the names you mentioned before, David Wilcox, Burton Cummings. I mean, you named them. Canadiana. It was a slice of Canadiana there. That's
absolutely,
for sure.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
So, when you consider for a city this size, especially back in the day when Pat Russo had the PG, the type of acts they brought in was just incredible for a city this size. And as I said, one of my favorite R&B bands, Canadian bands, were the Lincolns, and they were there all the time, and it was just incredible the depth of talent that has come through the city. And
so, when you grew up, did you grow up downtown, or did you grow up?
Well, I basically grew up on Center Street, which is the street the Bellevue House is on, and very fortunate, and to this day still have. One of my brother-in-laws grew up down the street, and I still have buddies friends that. Grew up in the same neighborhood, I had an idyllic childhood. You used to walk to the school every day, walk home for lunch, and had a bunch of buddies. One's Mike Hickey, who's my lawyer now, and a bunch of us, and the Finn brothers, and we'd walk home, and we'd get in all kinds of trouble on the way home. We were actually laughing about that. Hick and I were laughing about that a few months ago. That just the mischief we would get into as kids just on the walk home. It was amazing. It was a great city to grow up in.
No, and even we. My brother, we started at St. Joseph's. All four of us went to St. Joseph's, and walk every day, and walk home for lunch, and walk back in the afternoon, and never a second thought to any concerns about safety or issues like. If anything else, we were the people that needed to be watched, not the general public. We were the ones that probably
we created a bit of mayhem.
Well, we had the big rivalry against Rideau Public School for whatever reason. And not to bring it down to Catholic versus Protestant, but oh my God, there was some animosity there. I remember at Rockdale Dairy. Do you remember Rockdale Dairy on the corner of Macdonell?
I used to get my hockey cards there. Yeah.
We used to get in some tilts there with some Rideau Pub. There was a tough crowd at Rideau, man. There was a tough crowd at Rideau.
Well, we had some tough guys at St. Joe's too. We had some. There were some guys that could chuck the knuckles too. So it was. I was saying to my boys on the weekend, like recess at St. Joseph's was kind of like gladiator school. It was. It was a tough. That 15 minutes was in the morning, and 15 minutes in the afternoon was the toughest 30 minutes of your life.
You got your physical activity then, for sure.
That's where I learned how to fight.
No, and that's where I, not to put a dampen the conversation, but I have concerns about these poor kids now having to get stuck in online learning and for the last 2 years and stuff like that, and been deprived of that bit of socialization, that you get. And I mean, unfortunately, it's just. It is what it is, and there was just no way around it. But
at every level, my oldest boy teaches high school, and I think he's spending more time dealing with mental health issues right now than he is actually with curriculum. And I can't imagine being kids in university going through this, because and it has a trickle down effect. I mean, the cycle is you get kids into first year. They move into res. They become buddies. They move out. They rent spaces from local landlords. Well, that sort of stuff isn't really happening. I mean, I know that landlords are still doing well, but that sort of dynamic has left the school, and it's going to have effect for a couple of years.
Yeah, no,
I
there's
remember,
certainly
our big. I was laughing with some buddies that I went to Brock with. I went to Brock University, and we were laughing, saying, our biggest terrible thing that happened to us. There was a beer strike, I think, in our second or third year. It was like
I
the world was
remember
coming to an end. The world
I
was coming to
remember it.
an end. Yeah. So, well, we figured out a way to get around it, but
That was my first year at university. Was the beer strike? It was whatever that was. I
yeah,
remember it distinctly. Yeah,
yeah, that
no,
was
no.
yeah. So. Yeah, but
You'd
I
think,
can't imagine, and kids in kindergarten and early grade school where you're really learning how to socialization and how to get along with other kids, and they're being deprived of this. So there's going to be a huge adjustment, and resources are going to need to be allocated to help kids
yeah,
at all
no,
different levels deal with this.
absolutely. And I think you touched on it, and I think it's becoming more and more spoken, and it needs to have the light shone on it brightly now, though, is that whole mental illness and the adverse effects mentally that it's had on every level of, and teachers alike too, right? On
Sure.
those that deliver the service and everybody else in that whole education system, right? I mean, it's just been no different than the first responders, right? I mean, it's just been a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, and just it all the way around.
And people are tired now too. I mean, there's fatigue. There's screen fatigue. There's I know when I was speaking of Brian Patterson, he's still a lecturer, he's still a prof at RMC, and he was saying, and rightfully so, that even though profs are prepared, they still feed off the class. You still, and you lose that on Zoom. And the one thing, and it's going to be, in your business, it's going to be an opportunity, I believe, is that once this is over and things are back open, and AJ Kilty was, and I were chatting about how there's going to be a massive demand for office space in Kingston, and the opportunities that will be there for somebody in your business, just because there have been some pluses to people working at home, but I think the pluses of people working in a common space much more outweigh the pluses of working from home, and just that the culture it develops within a company that is sorely needed.
Well, I mean, we're social creatures by nature, right? So, I mean, I don't think any of us. I mean, not to say that people don't like their alone time or like being alone, but not for prolonged periods of time. I know I'm guilty of that for sure. So, yeah. Well, listen, I think we've kind of just gabbed around, which is exactly what I wanted to happen today, and just have a casual conversation and catch up and say hello and talk about our city and the different little aspects of it. And I hope we haven't bored anybody with our little stories and stuff.
I don't think.
I enjoyed it.
The great thing about Kingston, I've said this forever, is that you get a big city feel, and within 45 minutes. I'm in an area of north of Kingston that hasn't changed in the 25 years I've been here, and it's there's still I'm surrounded by all kinds of wildlife, and again I'm just a short drive to Kingston, so that's one of the huge pluses of this area.
Then that's why we're experiencing the massive exodus from those larger centers and the influx of people here, because the Muskokas are beautiful, and I don't doubt that. But that's become now for the uber wealthy to be there and play in that playground. But Kingston, we all the time, where can you drive an hour and get basically a 3-season or a 4-season cottage, or almost basically a year-round home, now for under $1 million with pristine waterfront and everything else. And that's what and I've said it before, as long as you've got an internet connection now, you're good to go, right? And you've got everything you need. So. Yeah, I
remember when we first started staying here, we had no cell service here. And it was like living in a vacuum for a weekend. Every weekend we'd come up, or when we would sorry about that.
No, that's all right.
We'd come up for holidays and stuff. There was unless you went to buy the paper, you didn't know what was going on. But now obviously I've got internet and stuff, so it's in a way it is kind of like having an ankle bracelet. But
well,
I can't get away from work anymore.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. I've lived a life of that. But anyway, well, Tim, listen, I just want to say
All
a
right,
huge
buddy.
thank you so much. And I appreciate your time, appreciate your comments and your stories. And we'll catch you on we talked about, and maybe someday I'll return the favor. And if you want to have me on your
Love to.
podcast, the Coach Podcast,
Yeah,
I'd love to be there for sure. So,
absolutely. We'll do that. We'll do that in the next month or so.
all right, man. Okay. Have
All right,
a good
Luca.
one.
Good to see you,
Take
buddy.
care. You
Bye.
too. Bye.